Thank you so much, Gene, and what an honor to be here. And I definitely am an Earth optimist, and so I love this summit. Thank you to the Smithsonian. And how's everybody feeling today? Good? Optimistic? Good. All right, great. Well, I've got a little story for you, and I'm going to advance this first slide here. I'm going to talk about starting a school in New York City, and how we started the school, and we thought that we'd finished our story. That was a big thing to have done. But then we realized that we were just beginning. And so we ended up starting a project called the Billion Oyster Project. This is where we do our work in New York City. I run the New York Harbor Foundation. I'm the executive director of the New York Harbor Foundation. Our mission is to improve the condition of, the access to, and awareness about New York Harbor. A lot of people know about the Hudson River. Here's the lower Hudson River right here. A lot of people know about Long Island Sound. A lot of people know about the Atlantic Ocean, maybe Jamaica Bay, Raritan Bay, Newark, as we just heard about, Newark Bay. But the place where all this comes together is called New York Harbor. It's one of the most densely populated places in the world and one of the most degraded, ultra-urban ecosystems on the planet. And so we thought it was a really fascinating place to try and work on how do we connect young people to the water? How do we connect young people to nature? How do we train young people who care about these things? And I wanted to just write down here, read for you all, is that in an increasingly urbanized world, the majority of young people are growing up apart from nature. We know that's true. And the natural worlds that they do happen to encounter are nowhere near as accessible or bountiful or beautiful and biodiverse as they were historically. The work to protect, preserve, and restore these ecosystems is broadly characterized as the environment. Simultaneously, there are massive, well-resourced efforts aimed at increasing student engagement in schools, particularly in inner cities, with a specific goal of improving outcomes for millions of young people. This effort is education. Too often, though, these issues, environment and education, are approached as distinct and unrelated. So this is the story of our attempt to insert the local ecosystem back into our education system and to insert kids back into the ecosystem, with the belief that if we are going to continue living, working, teaching, and learning on this planet, we must fundamentally change how humans learn about and interact with nature. So I'm going to back it up a little bit and tell you briefly about my own story. I grew up on a farm in Virginia where it's really easy to interact with nature. And I fell in love with the natural world. Those are my earliest memories. And I realized going through all of school and college that I had developed a disproportionate affection for the natural world that I didn't see in a lot of my peers. And so that's something I wanted to nurture, and I was a biology major in college. And I realized from an early age that I wanted to stop the destruction of the natural world that I was witnessing. I had no idea how I would do it. I thought I'd do it as a biologist, so I was a biology major. But I spent one year working for the Wildlife Conservation Society down in the jungles, monitoring macaws. And after about a month of it, I got really bored and realized I'm not going to be a very good biologist. So I have to figure out a way to get back to more people. And I ended up out of college working for the group Riverkeeper up in New York City. I'd never been to New York City, but I worked for Riverkeeper helping document pollution on the Hudson River and helping teach people about the Hudson River. And I fell, honestly, very deeply in love with the Hudson River in a way that I didn't anticipate doing at all. And I learned more than I felt like I had learned during my high school or my college experiences when I was working on and about protecting and restoring the Hudson River. And I realized at that moment, I was 23, but I realized at that moment that the work that I wanted to do, I had wanted to do since I was really young, and I wasn't able to do it until I got to this place where I was working when I was 24. I wanted to be working to protect, restore fisheries when I was a kid. I wanted to protect and restore marshland when I was a kid. I grew up duck hunting and fishing, and I always wanted to work to protect more of these species and create more abundance. But it was really hard to do it. So I worked for Riverkeeper, and I loved it, and I remember thinking, this should be school. This is what school should look like. I was out catching fish in a big net with DEC scientists 100 miles up the Hudson River. I remember thinking this is what schools should be. But I didn't realize at the time that that was really what I wanted to work on, and I went to work for Waterkeeper Alliance for 3 more years, helping start new waterkeeper programs around the world. And I had kind of a dream job because I was traveling all over the world, vetting new potential waterkeepers and helping them become waterkeepers by incorporating or getting trained. And over the course of 3 years, helped 60 new programs start, and I loved it. But I was still living in New York City, and I was frustrated about a couple things. First of all, I didn't have a lot of access to the natural world, and I was missing that. Second of all, I wanted there to be a place where we could actually train these people, these new potential water keepers. There wasn't a physical training facility. But the third and most important one is that I was part of a massive, progressive environmental movement, and it was almost entirely older white men. And I thought, this isn't going to work. First of all, it's not fair. It's not fair that these opportunities aren't for more people of color, aren't for more younger people, aren't for more women. But second of all, it's not going to work. If our goal, if what we're trying to do is protect the environment, we're going to lose if we aren't representing a much broader demographic. And here I was in New York City, where in the public schools, 8 out of every 10 kids are students of color. And so I thought, well, how are we training young people in our cities to protect the planet? And realizing there's a school in New York City about everything, but there wasn't a school about that local place, New York Harbor. And so it was an interesting case of me just saying, why don't we start a New York Harbor school? And everyone I talked to about it saying, how can I help? So I was 27 years old, and I proposed the New York Harbor School. And we actually, when we first started, I'm not clicking this very well. When we first started, we actually started right here in Bushwick, Brooklyn, which happens to be the very furthest place from the water in the entire city. And a really unlikely and tough place to start a school. We're on the 4th floor of an old, phased-out Bushwick High School, 125 students, public high school, not even a charter school. And we had to travel an hour and a half to get our kids to the water to try and get them to fall in love with the marine environment. It was a really tough thing to do. It was awesome to be in that community because it was definitely addressing those kids and that pipeline issue that I wanted to work on. But it was tough because we had lack of access. And so I worked for 6 years to try and identify a place on the water to do this. And as you can see, there's 600 miles of waterfront in New York City. Lots of opportunities. I'm now realizing I'm going to have to go a lot faster. So after 6 years, we moved the school to this beautiful island and the pointer right here in the middle of New York Harbor called Governor's Island. And Governor's Island is a 172-acre former military base. It's been empty since 1995, and the Harbor School became the first tenant on Governor's Island. We moved into a beautiful $35 million new facility. Students were now commuting, mostly from Bushwick, but from all 5 boroughs all over the city. So we now had 475 students. This is 2010, 9 through 12. And we had the average commute for a student was an hour. And yet they came to school, and we were creating a bunch of programs, 6 of which are called these career and technical education programs. We created 6 career and technical education programs in marine fields: aquaculture, marine biology, marine systems technology, ocean engineering, professional diving, and vessel operations. All of those fields mean that a Harbor School student takes 3 years of sequential courses that terminate with a technical credential in one of those fields. And so it felt a little bit, and here's just sort of a nice picture of all the great stuff that was happening at Harbor School. It felt a little bit like we'd slayed a dragon. We'd built the school. We'd created these 6 career and technical education programs. We were on Governor's Island. We built a second Marine Science and Technology Center. But we were missing something, which was, first of all, it was really hard to engage kids in the actual work of the marine environment. We could take them rowing, or we could sail, or we could drive boats, or we could build boats, or we could do water quality monitoring, we could do aquaculture. We could do a lot of that stuff, but what was bringing it all together? What was the work? What was the real work of Harbor School about? The second thing is we wanted to export the work that we were doing to more kids, to more places, but we couldn't go start more schools. It was really hard to do that. And so we thought, what's our curriculum that we can spread throughout the city? And the third thing is that the harbor that we'd built our entire school around and about was still a massively degraded resource, still a really largely inaccessible resource, still really polluted. And so what responsibility did we have to try and do something about that? So we decided that we wanted to restore New York Harbor. We wanted to export this curriculum. We wanted to engage all of our kids in one project. We called that project the Billion Oyster Project. We called it the Billion Oyster Project because looking back historically, we realized that New York Harbor had 220,000 acres of oyster reef, trillions of oysters. Every drop of water would have passed through an oyster in New York Harbor faster than it would have done that in the Chesapeake or other places that are so well known for their oysters, because New Yorkers ate them all so long ago that there have been none for about 100 years, functionally extinct in New York Harbor. Rather than 220,000 acres of reef, the bottom of the harbor is just flat mud everywhere. And so we wanted to bring back oysters, and we wanted to bring back 1 billion oysters, and we wanted to engage the entire city in doing it. And that's essentially what the Billion Oyster Project is about. How do you engage an entire city in restoring its local marine ecosystem? And we didn't have the answers, which actually is really cool because if you don't have the answers, everyone gets more engaged. Kids are much more likely to learn well if the adults don't have the answers. Other partners are much likely to engage if you're not telling them exactly what to do, but rather, can you help us do this thing that we don't know exactly how to do? And so, using a lot of other schools as partners, we have, I'm gonna have to rush through, we have 100 school partners now through a National Science Foundation grant where we're building curriculum for middle schools. We are collecting oyster shells to use as the building blocks for growing new oysters from 60 restaurants around New York City. That's only 10%, so we have a long way to go. We're obviously getting a lot of community volunteers involved to help come out and do the work, which is really thrilling. And those 6 career and technical education programs are actually living out their work by doing the Billion Oyster Project at Harbor School. So these are aquaculture students measuring oysters on an oyster reef under the Williamsburg Bridge. These are marine biology students measuring the water quality at that same reef to see whether or not those oysters had a positive impact. These are actually students who are welding, who are building the reef infrastructure and getting their welding certification. These are students doing their ocean engineering. We use the ROVs that they build to go down and monitor the reefs when scuba divers can't get down there. These are scuba divers monitoring one of the experimental reefs right off the coast of Brooklyn. And these are students in our vessel operations program operating our 6 boats that we're using to help go out to reefs, build reefs, essentially run a gigantic commercial operation. And so I only have 30 seconds left, but I'm going to take just a little bit of that time to run a video that shows how all these great pictures came together and showcasing the work of the Harbor School students in the Billion Oyster Project.
Hey guys, this is Benjamin Von Wong, and we're here today on Governor's Island shooting for the Billion Oyster Project. Our goal to highlight the kids, the heroes of the project that are actually bringing this to life.
Back when the settlers were coming in, there were oyster reefs and like mountains of them, tons of them, but we ate those away. Oysters are keystone species, and what they do is they filter the water, and any like sustenance that's in the water, they'll process that and they'll eat it. That's their food. Like one fully grown adult oyster can filter 50 gallons a day.
I'm making a tangible difference in my environment because we live in an island city, so it's really great to know that when I come out here to help, it's definitely making a difference. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna write this paper to the governor and like maybe something will happen. It's like, oh yeah, I went out sampling on Saturday. What did you do?
Okay, so thank you to Ben Von Wong. That video is going to be released tomorrow for Earth Day, and so check it out, the whole video. I just wanted to give a quick snapshot. Huge honor to be here. I've gone beyond my time, but I really do want people to think about why we can't put young people to work restoring ecosystems in school. There are degraded ecosystems everywhere there are students, and so often we put so much time, energy, and money into their education, and we neglect the local ecosystem right where they are. And so I just think it's an exciting model because at the same time, not only are we preparing them for college, but we're preparing them for real careers, career and technical education. And I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you.